Hi, all right. Welcome to the Washington Public Library. We are doing a watercolor card. I'm going to just show you some quick steps on how to do it. Of course, you know, you're the artist. You can do what you want. But this is just a fun, quick tutorial. So everybody should have gotten a card in their package. I'm putting mine up on an easel today, just so for the sake of filming, to make it a little easier to show you all what we're doing. But you can lay it flat on your table, that's fine. I am going to tape mine, and I suggest doing this even if you're working on a table or wherever you're painting at, just because it helps hold the paper down. It'll keep it flatter. You don't have to. It will work even without the tape, but it just makes it easier. So I'm going to tape it off. I'm trying to get the tape pretty straight, so it'll leave just a tiny border on the edges if I get close. Alright, so there we go. So now I've got it taped down, and so hopefully that will help keep my paper flatter when it dries or as it's drying. The next thing I'm going to do, everybody should have a palette with some paints on it. The first thing you want to do is you want to take some water, get a cup or whatever. I'm going to just take some, and you can just take my brush. I'm going to dip it in the water, and then I'm going to just hit the paints that I'm going to use today. So I think we've got some Payne's Gray, should be in your on your palette. You're going to have some red, some Permanent Rose red. So I'm just dropping little droplets of water and letting them sit there and soak into the paint, which will make them soft and make them run. We're going to have some yellow. So I'm going to cover that with some water. There should be some green. And there should be some purple. So I'm going to drop that on there. Alright, and so that's just going to kind of help get you started. It's going to wet down your watercolors and get them ready. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to start with the red, the Permanent Rose here. I wet my brush, and then just so it's not like excessively wet, I just kind of run it against the tip of my water bowl. All right, and then I'm going to get some paint on my brush, and I'm not really digging into the actual paint. I'm just kind of putting it into more of the water. There. All right, and then over here I'm going to just lightly start doing it, and it's kind of like a circle. I'm just going to kind of create a circle, and I'm going to do, this is my bigger flower. I'm just going to loosely kind of circle a shape right there. And I'm going to come back, I'm going to pick up a little more paint. And I kind of want those white spaces in between. I'm just kind of making little circles or kind of curved arcs kind of going through. All right, and so that's my first one. All right. And then
it's just a real light red.
Yes, it's a real light red. All right, and I'm picking up the same color, and I'm going to do my second one down here. And this one is going to be smaller, but I'm going to get the basic outline of it first, because I kind of want to have an idea of how big I want this. And once I get the basic outline, then I'll wet my brush a little bit more. I'll get some more paint. And then I'll do the inner part. And I just kind of, I'm not being too careful. I'm kind of letting the water flow as it wants. That's a great thing about watercolor. It kind of does its own thing, and it's kind of fun to watch what happens. All right. And then the next one I'm going to do is the purple one. I'm going to pick up some purple. And as light as this is, it will dry even lighter than what you're seeing originally. I'm doing the same thing with this one. I'm just kind of going around. Make a circle.
And the people that are doing it flat, the water is going to run a little differently though than yours, right?
Yes. Yeah. So if you're doing it flat, it won't have this tendency right now because of gravity. It's kind of pulling it all down. When you're doing it flat, it may pull in a little bit of a different way, but it will run a little bit. All right. So there we go. We've got our three flowers in. All right, and now that I've gotten kind of my basic shape there, I'm going to go ahead and pick up some more red. Because the thing is about watercolor is that it always dries about almost 50% lighter than what you put it down as. So if this is, that's one of the beautiful things I love about watercolor is the layering you get to do. So I'm going to go back over and kind of almost repeat this process with the same colors and the same kind of way. I'm going to pick up my pink again. And this time I may play with my brush a little bit more in the red so it picks up a little bit more pigment with the water. All right. And then I'm going to kind of go back in the same areas. I want my center to be darker. So I'm going to actually start there. I'm going to start with my center. And then I'm going to kind of work my way out. And I'm just kind of dabbing a little bit here and there as I was before. But I'm not going over completely everything where I was. I'm covering a little bit where I wasn't before. And I'm leaving some of the areas that I had been because I want the outer edge, some of those lighter pinks. And even on the second flower. And I'm just kind of dabbing and letting it kind of move on its own. And then while it's still wet, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to pick up some yellow just for some interest. And I'm going to drop it into this bigger main flower. And just kind of see what that does. And so I'll pick up a little red too, and I'll just kind of mix them. Okay, and if at any point your paint starts to pool on you, and by pool I mean it kind of puddles up together, it gets a little thick, grab a paper towel or a napkin, and you can just kind of lightly touch it to where it's starting to pool, and it'll soak it up, and it'll stop that from happening. All right, I'm gonna get this purple flower in. Because you can see here, I've got it where it's kind of dripping and it's all pulling in there. And if I leave that, eventually it will spread out and it'll start leaking and running into my next flower. And I don't want it to do that. So I'm just going to lightly touch it and take care of that problem and keep that from happening. Whoops. And as you go, you may have to add a little bit more water to your paint. That initial first droplets on there may not have been enough, so that's fine. Just add some more water to your paints as you go. All right. And there may be a couple times where you just kind of have to stop and pause, give it a couple minutes just to kind of help it dry. And that's good too. All right. And so I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to let these kind of rest and dry a little bit before I go back and do anything more to them. And right. And we're going to go ahead and start doing some of the leaves. And so the leaves, I'm just picking up. I'm going to actually start with some yellow. And they're just simple like oval shapes. Just kind of drawing it out with my brush.
They're what shapes?
Ovalish
Oval
shapes. They're kind of elongated ovals.
So like leaf.
Yes. Yes, like a leaf. And since nature does it differently, and it's always, there's no real set pattern, you know, you can decide where you want your leaves at. And I'm not going to put yellow on all my leaves. I'm just doing some of them. And then I'm going to pick up my green.
And you're working real fast, wet on wet.
Yes. So yours may be going slower than this because one of the issues you'll have as you work wet on wet is that you will have more of a tendency to run. So if you don't want it to run, and again, like I said, mentioned the pulling earlier, you can use your paper towel to help kind of ease that back. Or you can give your painting a little bit time in between to kind of dry. And I'm going back kind of just over where I had my yellow. I'm not completely covering up my yellow. I'm just covering parts of it, letting it blend in some areas and some areas letting it stay. And some, I'm just going to create a whole new leaf altogether. So now that I've got kind of the basics, now I pretty much have everything on my card mapped in. Now I'm gonna just go hit some details. Basically, I just want there to be a couple darker spots in each of my flowers. So I'm just gonna kind of hit the center of my flower a little bit. And I'm using less water. I'm keeping my brush fairly dry and just tapping my paint there. Again, I'm just going kind of more for the center of the flower there. I may add, I've got a touch of, let me take a bit of my purple and add it to this, which will give it some depth and richness right here in the center. And I kind of like that. Okay. And I'm going to do that down here. And now these, I don't want, I've kind of put all my focus here with the different contrasting colors. So on my kind of my side flowers here, I'm not going to add as many other colors or add extra stuff. I'm just going to kind of keep them strictly the colors they were, but I am going to try to give it a little bit of a darker center. And my purple the same way. And I know right now it looks really undefined and a little messy, but that's okay because when we take our pen and ink around it, it'll help define that. And that'll be fine. And I still just want this right here to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to go back, take up a little bit more red. All right, and then I think you'll have a little bit of what we call Payne's gray. It's a very bluish kind of gray. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to kind of hit some of my leaves with that color. It's going to kind of create a little bit of a shadow leaf. A little bit of a shadow on the leaves. Again, I'm not going to hit every leaf with that. I'm just going to kind of pick and choose to hit some of my leaves. You can even mix it a little bit with your green or a little bit with your yellow. You may choose to only do maybe half a leaf with that color. If you put it somewhere you don't like I just did there, you can always, while it's still pretty wet, grab your paper towel and kind of dab it up. It will come up usually pretty well. doing that. And I've switched it up. I picked up some more of my just regular green. And I kind of bounce back and forth between the colors. Which one do I want right now? Okay, and so once you get to this point, you're going to want to let it sit. Probably maybe 5 minutes. You're going to want to let it just kind of dry and set so you're not fighting the wetness. I'm going to lift that off a little bit. And then once you do that, then you can go over it. You can start going over it with the pen. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do it while it's still wet. So this might be a little interesting is the word for it. But it will work. But it's better if you let it sit and let it dry for just a couple minutes. Okay? So here's where we start kind of getting our details. I'm going to go around the outside of my flowers. And I'm not going to do it in just like a full circle mode. I'm going to do it by little lines. Like I'll do a little line there. And then, okay, I'll connect it and do another line here, another line here. But I'm not going to try to do a big, just full-on circle all at the same time. I'll do long lines and I'll do smaller lines. And some lines I won't even bother connecting. Like I won't even bring that closed. And then I'm going to go into my middle. And I'm thinking kind of like a rose petal, how they go in. And I'm kind of let some of what the shapes that I created in here kind of define where I put my pen lines. And they're kind of just all arcing lines. And that's my center right there. And then I'm going to move on to the second one. And some of it is even catching. I'm taking even some of the white of the paper. It's not even fully following just where I painted. There's our second flower. And the pen I'm using, it's just a regular ballpoint pen. It does glide easily, which is nice. So you want one that does move pretty well if you use this. All right, so there we go. We've got our 3 flowers. And then to help the leaves and things pop, oops, just don't do that. I'm going to outline them. I'm just going to kind of follow their basic shape. I might add some interesting little detail by just kind of doing maybe a little, just kind of indicating a little stem, especially right there, because it kind of helps cover up my mistake. Just kind of as I feel like it, just kind of for the fun of it. You don't want to get too carried away because you don't want it to distract too much. But really, this is just a very fun, easy way to do this. And suddenly, all the shapes and everything are starting to make sense. It kind of tells the viewer what they're looking at. It helps kind of define it. All right, and there we go. And now you've got your card with your flowers. So I hope you guys have fun and enjoy.